name is Agasha Joan from Mother Kevin College, Mabira, and I've come along with Nabale Maria, Lubega Abdurrahman, and Nabuto Jemil.
We are negating a motion that states that this house believes that tourism is a modern form of cultural imperialism, and all we expect in this debate is to win by God's grace.
House rules. Each speaker has 5 minutes. The first and last minutes are protected. The judge will ring a bell to signal the protected time. The bell will ring continuously after 5 minutes.
Pano, this house believes that tourism is a modern form of cultural imperialism. In this particular debate, we need to look at something that is already existing in society. That is tourism. Pano, what is tourism? Tourism refers to the act of spending time away from home in pursuit for things like relaxation, in pursuit for things like pleasure, in pursuit for things like recreation, while using commercial services and products that always exist in those grounds. Right now, modern form in this particular debate, we look at it as what exists as the current trend of cultural imperialism. Pano, what is cultural imperialism, right? Now, cultural imperialism simply refers to the dominancy of one culture over another due to things like it is marginalized at the end of the day, leading to loss of cultural values, right? Now, because culture already means what people practice in their day-to-day life. This means that this kind of cultural imperialism influences on how people think, on how people act, on how people perceive the world. That is what we perceive as culture in this particular debate. 3 forms of tourism we present. That is ecotourism, that is business tourism, that is also industrial tourism, there's also cultural tourism. Now, Pano, let us look at a world where in the current status quo, tourism is happening under business. Things like trade expos are happening. That is all tourism. What is transferring in trade expos? As we now speak, the Zambia Expo is still happening. That is tourism. The social engagement that is always there, that leads to the cultural imperialism. I will engage on that. Now, 2 stakeholders we do present. That is the host countries and the tourist country. Now, in the host country, these are the people, these are the countries that are always receiving these tourists, right? Now, what happens, or what do these tourists do that demolishes away our cultures, right? No, what have these tourists done that have demolished away our own cultures, right? Now, we look at something called commodification of cultures. What does commodification mean? It means in a world where our own cultures, our uniqueness of identity has been sold as a commodity. What do I mean? Things like traditional dances that were meant for things like initiation ceremonies have been sold as entertainment to these tourists. At a point in time, the cultural values of our own status quo have been eroded away. 2, we look at the tourist environment. The tourists come for things like pleasure, adventure, things like to explore our world, right? But at the end of the day, what impact does it bring to our own world? Now, we look at the economic dependency and exploitation that exists on status quo. How does it come about? When these people come to explore, because we have realized that tourism can involve things like business. They only come in the claim of tourism while they are at the expense of things like exploitation. A point in time, we look at the lodges. Most of the lodges that are always in tourist centers are owned by non-Ugandans, because we're taking our parameter as Uganda. So looking at that factor, even when the initial goal of a host country perceiving tourism should be economic growth, we are looking at economic growth. All the profits that are made repatriate back to the foreign countries. How? Most of these companies, most of the lodges that exist, most of these businesses that always exist, all kind of stakeholders that are beyond line, all are foreigners. So at a point in time, we find economic exploitation and economic dependence happens. So how does now culture get eroded away? Now look at what we call the imposition of Western cultures. They have come, right? Now, when they have come to do things like touring. So what is the impact of that thing? So remember, most of them own these businesses, lodges and sort of stuff, right? Now, when they own lodges, they will influence the people on the ground to actually suit their standards, make their expectations. Sort of a world in a way whereby people are, when these tourists are having maybe lodge hubs, right? The people who will work there will have to appear like them in appeal to suit their expectations as tourists. So that brings about our loss of cultural identity. Things like our Kasubi tombs that used to exist, that was an area that was reserved for, the tombs of the Baganda culture. But right now, there are some areas that were not accessed. So in that particular regard, my second speaker will come and show you how tourism is a modern form of cultural imperialism. I beg to submit.
I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Resolve. This House believes that tourism is a modern form of cultural imperialism. So I'll begin by rebuttaling what the first affirmative speaker talked about. So the first affirmative speaker comes here and tells us about the cultural performances that are being done for the tourists in terms of pleasure. But I would love to inform the first affirmative speaker that these cultural performances are voluntarily done by the local natives. They are not forced to do it. They are not imposed by the tourists to perform the cultural dances, but they are rather done voluntarily by the local natives. And this makes it for the local people do it, and they decide to share their heritage with the tourists. This makes it agency and not domination. So the first affirmative speaker also talked about the money that is being taken back to the foreign countries. But I would like to inform you that according to status quo, we see that tourism is contributing 6.06 trillion to the Uganda's economy. So what does this imply? This implies that the money that is being gotten from the tourist attraction tourists is given back into the country. The first affirmative speaker also said that these tourists are coming for adventure, and that was rightly said. They are coming for adventure. They are adventurers, and they're not imposers. So, and first of all, I would love to inform you that a single entry tourist visa lasts for 3 months for what? For a tourist to come to Uganda, according to www.immigration.go.com. What does this imply? This implies that they've come to tour. They've not come to impose into the country. Coming to my points, we as Team Affirmative say that tourism is not a form of cultural imperialism, but rather is a form of culture exchange. How? And how is this going to promote culture exchange? If we promote responsible tourism, and how are we going to ensure responsible tourism? This will be done through involvement of local community leaders, deciding aspects of their culture in order to prevent outsiders from taking over cultural narratives. Our parameter is Uganda because we see that Uganda is culturally diverse country where tourism supports rather than suppressing the local culture. This is where it promotes community-based and heritage promotion driven tourism, where the locals participate directly in how the culture is shared. We shall also ensure orientation of tourists about local customs and traditions. This will help the tourists from unknowingly offending local communities. All this will ensure respect instead of replacement of the culture. We also see that there are various indications that show that Uganda is not undergoing cultural imperialism from tourism. What is this? We see that there is presence of vibrant traditional ceremonies like the Kwanjila and the circumcisions. These are not being eradicated by the tourists. We also see that cultural institutions still play a vital role in the governance and the issues of cultural preservation. We also see that kingdoms like Buganda and Busoga have media platforms like BBS and Baba TV in order to preserve culture and ensure programs like Kabaka's Run and also Kisakati. This helps to ensure preservation of culture. According to UNESCO Culture for Development Indicators, CDI's framework measures aspects like cultural participation, heritage sustainability, and freedom of expression. What does this imply? We see that Uganda has all these accords. This implies that tourism is not affecting the country. According to, I rest my case. My second speaker will come here to give points about cultural exchange in Tewe, and my third speaker will come here to weigh the debate.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute. This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1.
One panel. Team, as today's particular debate, what does Team Negative present? They come and tell us that actually that tourism isn't actually eroding our culture, but actually what is being promoted nowadays is culture exchange. But then we would like to come and actually correctify them. They're telling us that actually tourism is there is culture exchange between us, the natives, and the tourists. But then we are looking at our world. This tourists coming into our country, and actually we are being forced to learn their languages so that we can be able to communicate to them. The people that work in this tourist camp, the people that work in these culture institutions, they actually have to learn their language. We are being forced to learn their language, such as the English language, to actually be able to to meet their standards, to be able to satisfy them. But then other tourists actually learning our languages. Tell me, how many tourists actually do you know that actually know the languages such as Luganda, such as Lunyankole? Because they're talking about culture exchange, and we say that language is part of culture. They come here and tell us that actually we as the natives, we are not presenting or you're not performing our culture. We are not being forced to perform our cultural dances, our cultural ceremonies, but actually doing it voluntarily. But after we come and tell them that actually when you look at us as a native, remember we are depending on these foreigners because we see that tourism is the second biggest earning income of Uganda's budget. So if we actually do, we are not doing these ceremonies or these performances voluntarily. We actually have to do them so that we can be able to attract these tourists to come to our countries to actually see our ceremonies. We're not going to do them voluntarily because I might want to do them, I might not want to do them. But when you do them voluntarily, there will be less profits or anything. But after we have to do them so that we're able to attract these tourists to be able to come into our country. Then after they come and talk about the tourists, they don't come to impart our culture, they don't come to abolish our culture, they actually come for adventure. But then as our first speaker came and told you that there are actually very many forms of tourism, such as business tourism. When these people come, like for example, business tourism, they come and they put up things like exports. So in these exports, what do we see? You are seeing where people are performing this culture performance, this culture festivals for the tourists. But then we actually see Uganda as an LDC country, as a less-developed country. That actually these trade exports are being funded by the foreigners. So even at the end of the day, the income that we are going to earn from these performances that we the natives have performed, the money that actually you're going to get from these performances or these trade exports is actually being earned by the tourists. So at the end of the day, the money is going to go back to the foreigners that they're going to use to develop themselves, but not us. So at the end of the day, we see that our culture is not being preserved, but instead it's being eroded, it's being exploited by these people. When they come and talk about the language, we see that these tourists have actually forced us to learn their language. They're reading out our languages, they're reading out our cultural values. When you look at our language and our dress code, take an example of the people who actually work in these areas where the tourists come in their places of accommodation. When you look at these people even where the tourists stay, we actually have to learn their language. We actually have to start dressing up the way that can satisfy them, that can meet their standards, to actually be able to continue attracting these tourists into our country, so as to get this culture, so as to get this income that is going to be earned from the tourists. So at the end of the day, their point of culture exchange does not stand, because we have clearly showed them that if really is their culture exchange, how comes that we are learning their cultures? They're being forced to learn their languages, they're being forced to learn their dress code, but they're not actually adopting to our culture, they're not adopting to our languages. That is the point that we are bringing in. So that point of culture exchange being voluntarily done is not there. Because if these cultural performances, these cultural ceremonies are being voluntarily done, they would have seen that. So therefore, I rest my case. Thank you.
Dear panel, what does Team Affirmative bring to us at this side of the house? They come here and tell us about the tourists coming to the specific countries for tourism, expecting familiar comforts and expectations. But for the mere fact that a tourist can go from their specific country to come to another country, it means that they have expected uniqueness, something different from their original culture. So how do you come here and tell us about them coming here expecting familiar expectations? Because you cannot leave a specific country, your homeland, expecting to go to another place which has the same lifestyle as yours. Of course, they are looking for uniqueness, they are looking for difference in culture, and that is why they have to carry out the tourism. So there is nothing like familiarity of expectations. They also come forth and tell us about the being forced to learn the language, the Western language, that is the English, so on and so forth, and behavior of these tourists. But mark you, the language being changed, these tourists being addressed in English, these tourists being addressed in English is because, to create an effective communication. But this does not mean that everyone in the specific country where the tourists have gone is going to learn this specific language to address the tourists. Of course, it is for some selected few people who are going to interpret for these tourists the specific cultures of that specific country. My first speaker came here and told you about the culture dances being done voluntarily and not coercive. What you got is what you thought we meant, that the culture dances are being performed to the tourists for free, but this is not what you wanted to do. We were trying to mean that they are not coercive, they are not forced. For these people to perform these specific culture dances to the tourists, it is out of will and it is presentation. For a mere fact that a tourist comes to your specific country, that means you have to present to them the uniqueness in your country, like the culture, because they have come to tour, to explore what is in your country. So performing the culture dances to these tourists has done no harm, but rather attracted more tourists to come to Uganda.
Speaker BR.
Rest, please. Why do we believe that tourism is not in any way a form of cultural imperialism? Because tourism instead encourages culture preservation, not erasure. Why does it do so? Why do we think so? Tourism gives economic value to cultural practices, which incentivizes communities to present, to teach, celebrate, preserve their cultures, their heritage, rather than let it fade due to modernization or urbanization. Take an example. If you have an old cup in your house and it attracts every visitor who comes at your home, to one extent that it's even attracting more people to come and even pay money so that they see your special cup in your specific house. Are you attracted to destroy it or to preserve it more? So that is why we come here and say that tourism does not lead in any way to culture imperialism, but rather even motivates the people of that specific country to preserve their culture more, because it becomes profitable, it becomes beneficial. Once a specific country has a high rate of tourists going to their country, that means that they are going to be exposed to the outside world. Their culture is going to be promoted. If your culture leaves this country and more people outside the world get to know about it, then that is promotion, that is preservation. You're motivated to preserve it more because it has become profitable to your specific country. What impact does this bring then, dear panel? Instead of losing the culture to the westernization, tourism can help protect language, dances, festivals, so many cultures, so on and so forth, than would otherwise die out. Take an example of the Imbalu circumcision ceremonies of the Bagisu that are now attended by both tourists and locals. This visibility has strengthened that cultural identity of Bagishu youth, has ensured intergenerational transmission of customs, because other nations have got to know about this Bagishu culture. I beg to submit.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute. This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
Resolved. Sunjimaram is my name. Affirmative side. First of all, I want to pose a question to the negative side. What are they debating? Culture exchange, culture preservation? We actually don't know. They keep going against their words. First of all, they come and tell us culture exchange, culture exchange. But then a speaker comes and tells us that we are there to present to the tourists, and they do not present to us. Is it culture exchange if they're not giving us anything and it's just us giving them? I do not know. Their claims are not being justified. Another thing, they come and tell us that the tourists are not forcing us to do what we are doing it out of goodwill. Yes and well, and they come and claim something like agency. We are telling them, yes, it is us that are choosing to do it so that we actually gain money. But then you look at something like commodification. We have told you that we are, as the hosts of the country where the tourists are going to come, we are going to go out of our way, we are going to get our culture, we are going to make it a commodity. And when you make a commodity, you're trying to impress someone, you're trying to attract a buyer, you're trying to make someone actually come and get your commodity so that you get money. And in that way, you're supposed to please the person, you're supposed to please the person, you're supposed to make the person want something. In that way, you're going to end up changing everything. And what are we doing? You're actually losing the culture, because you're going to keep on changing your things so that you actually attract them. You're going to change it so that they actually impressed. You're going to keep changing everything so that they are impressed, they keep coming, so that they keep giving you money. But what are the tourists here to do? They're actually here for things like maybe culture. They're here to see what your culture is. But the more you modify it to suit what they want, is the more you actually lose the culture. And what is that going to lead to? It's going to lead to the tourists not coming because they actually don't have any culture, because you have lost the originality, you have lost everything that they actually came for initially. And in you doing that, you have lost economy, you have lost culture, and currently you stand no chance at surviving. And they come and tell us that it is culture exchange at certain time. Their first speaker came and said it's culture exchange. But is it culture exchange? If we are adapting to them and they are not adapting to us, panel, we keep asking the question, is it culture exchange if we adapt and they don't adapt? I don't think it is. And they keep making claims that it's culture preservation, that we are preserving the dances, the everything. But they're telling you that it is not. If it's something like maybe a Kwanjula dance or maybe a circumcision dance, it should be done on that occasion, not for the tourists to see. But that is what they are doing. For them, they just want it to be done for the tourists to see so that they gain money, which is not what should be done. It should be a culture dance and it should be done where it should be, not for the tourists to see in the guise of it being preserved. Dear panel, we are telling you that they keep making claims they get money. They get money and keeping culture, all that. But panel, we are asking you, is it culture preservation if you actually don't preserve any of your culture because you keep modifying it to suit what they actually want? I don't think, we as the farmer don't think it is. And then they keep making claims like we are not being forced, we are not doing this, we are not doing this. It is that they are not forcing us to do this, but we are doing it on our own will. We are telling them that we do it to gain money. And in that form of way, we are commodifying our own culture. And when we commodify our own culture, we are changing everything so that we make them want it. And when we make them want it, they will get fed up. They give an example of maybe when you have a cup in your house, they keep coming to see it. People will get fed up of seeing that very cup. So you will want to get something better for them to see. And in you wanting to get something better for them to see, you're changing what you initially had. That is what we are talking about. Is there a culture imperialism? Yes, there is culture imperialism because of tourism. In that form of way, we are telling them that the negators are going to lose this debate because they have failed to see that culture imperialism is actually happening because of tourism. The same things that the tourists are coming to see are the same things that we keep changing so that we suit what the tourists actually want, rather than what we initially had, what we actually had in our own way, behavior, the way we dress, the way we everything. And my previous speaker came and told you that we are seeing that they come, we change the way we dress, the way we speak, everything just for them. Thank you so much.
Resolved. This House believes that tourism is a modern form of cultural imperialism. We as Team Negative come to oppose this motion, saying that tourism is not a modern form of cultural imperialism. Because, let me inform Team Affirmative that tourists are individuals or small groups who observe and participate, not impose. What does Team Affirmative bring on their side of the house? In their first speech, they come and tell us that traditional dances have been sold as a commodity. But we as Team Negative come here to tell them that we are not selling our traditional dances as a commodity, but it is entertainment. It is entertainment to impress the tourists. And as we are impressing the tourists, we are promoting our culture more. Because as these tourists observe what we are presenting to them as cultural dances, they will go back to their original homelands, and they will expose our culture to those who did not get opportunity to come. They also come and tell us that there is imposition of Western cultures. They claim that when tourists establish businesses, the local people are forced to adopt to their behavior in order to appear to their expectations. But we as Team Negative come to tell Team Affirmative that tourists do not impose. Tourists come to just observe and take back report to their countries if possible. We come and tell them that tourism is a form of tourism can help us to preserve culture. They say no. But I come and tell them that due to tourism, the government is able to preserve cultural sites such as the Kasubi tombs. Don't you see that we are preserving our culture through tourism? Because the more these tourists come to observe our cultural sites and cultural dances, we preserve our culture more because it is a source of employment and revenue to the government. We see that we earn 6.06 trillion from tourism, and because of that, the government will be forced to preserve cultural sites, so that we can attract more tourists to come to our country. In their second speech, They come and tell us that our point of cultural exchange does not stand. I come and tell them that our point of cultural exchange stands because as tourists come to our countries, they observe our cultural dances. Don't you see that through observing our cultural dances, these tourists can get impressed and go back and talk about our cultural dances in their home countries. They also come and tell us that locals are forced to learn languages such as English from tourists. We come and tell them that we not only have international tourists, but we also have we not only have international tourists, but we also have local tourists. These local tourists use local languages. We are not eroding any culture here. And if English is used for international tourists, it is for effective communication. It is for effective communication by the tour guides and the tourists, so that we can earn revenue from tourism. I also tell them that rather than being a form of imperialism, tourism serves as a catalyst for cultural pride and survival, something cultural imperialism seeks to erode. We see that tourism is not a form of cultural imperialism, but rather tourism can enable us to preserve our culture, as we said in our second speech. Dear panel, I've explained how preservation of culture comes about. That if tourism brings in income, the government will be forced to preserve tourism. Will be forced to preserve cultural sites. I rest my case.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute. This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
Resolved. This House believes that tourism is a modern form of cultural imperialism. Speaker, I would like precise and concise answers. Do all tourists come from one country?
No.
Do you agree that customer care is the only free way you can attract more customers to your business?
No.
What is your tribe?
I'm Uganda.
Do you consent that tourists spend less than a year in Uganda?
Not all of them.
What change in culture has been brought about by the tourists?
Language.
Do you consent that these tourists spread our culture when we present it to them? In which country has tourism changed the culture?
Uganda here.
Do you consent that tourists take videos that they upload them to their socials and also take them home?
They leave dominance.
Do you agree that the language we speak to tourists is not as a result of tourists, but as a result of our colonial masters?
Why don't they speak our languages?
All right, you can take your seat. Dear panel, I stand here before you not to negate, but to justify as to why you should take our side of the resolution. Dear panel, from the best that Team Affirmative presents to us of language, I want to give you that this English we speak is not as a result of the tourists coming to our country, but rather the colonial masters who colonized us left us with the English we speak that we now use to speak to tourists, but not the tourists influencing us. Then the question of do all tourists come from one country? These tourists come from different countries. We have tourists coming from Germany, we have tourists coming from Britain, we have tourists coming from Italy. Not that all of them can speak English. And us using the English, it's just a way of improving our communication with them. If I tell you that customer care is the only free way to attract more customers into your business, I am sure all of you will have to agree with this, because one of the customer cares we have is the way we speak to our customers, the way we handle them, and we will welcome them. So if we speak English, a language that is understood, that was already brought by our customers that was already brought by our colonialists to us, then we speak it to these tourists. We are just creating a way that we can speak to them, and they take our culture to their homelands, such that those people that side can also admire it. It's not that we are selling our culture, but dear panel, I want to see this, that these people take videos when we present dances, when we present very many things, and if they take these videos, they upload them to their socials. People they left home can also be attracted by this culture. What have we done? We have promoted our culture elsewhere. If we don't present this culture to the tourists, what is going to happen? Our culture is going to remain within our country. If what happens after, when the people who know about it die, then we don't have culture anymore. But if we present it to them, even people outside, imagine someone coming from Britain, then they say, yes, I want to see this Imbalu dance. Why? Because they have seen it as a result of us exposing it. Not that we are selling it. When I asked the fourth affirmative speaker, what is his tribe? And he said he's a Muganda. Obviously, we can see that we still recognize our tribes, we still recognize our culture. After even the tourists coming, after all the tourists coming to our country. That means that even if we spread this culture to them, we're not going to forget in mind that we remain people of this country, we remain people of this culture. Me talking to a tourist in English doesn't mean that I'm going to forget my local language. No, it doesn't mean so. And dear panel, I want you to see the second argument that they bring about of commodification as something that they did not understand properly. Because when these tourists are presented to, therefore tourism is not a form of cultural imperialism, but tourism doesn't influence culture.
Does customer care imply that we sell our culture?
We are not selling culture.
Does culture have meaning when it loses significance?
Meaning and significance are the same.
Is culture preserved when it suits the impression of a foreigner?
If they spread it.
Does short-term economic growth justify long-term cultural dominance?
Pardon?
Does short-term economic growth justify long-term cultural dominance?
No.
If tourism represents exchange, doesn't that imply that we are making our culture a commodity?
We are not exchanging culture.
Then why did your first and second speakers clash? One said exchange, the other said preservation.
You didn't understand it. We are preserving it by these people spreading it.
Is exchange sharing and preservation maintenance?
Sharing is...
Yes or no?
Sharing is a way of exchange.
If impression can impact an economy, wouldn't need for more money cause culture modification?
No.
Your third speaker said tourists observe and participate. Elaborate that participation, please.
When they enjoy the dance, they also come and join, then they also dance.
Can you volunteer to suit the needs of another if it diminishes your values?
Pardon?
Can you volunteer to suit the needs of another if it diminishes your values?
There is no way diminishing our values.
Are you aware that Batwa Pygmies were displaced for the sake of tourists from their homeland?
They encroached a forest. They didn't do it for tourists.
Is that where they lived?
They had encroached a forest.
Is that where their culture lied?
They had encroached a forest.
If exchange has either sides earning, why doesn't the other side do anything the other party does?
One is earning monetary and another is earning by spreading, being known.
Please have your seat. So we do realize from this debate that Team Negative comes here with nothing clear on their minds. Two of their speakers claim that they are here for cultural exchange, and two come here and claim that they are here for culture preservation. But when we look at the side of Team Affirmative, we have come here and we have clearly shown you that tourism has become a modern form of culture preservation. Why? Because when Team Negative came and showed you that they are coming and they are saying that they are exchanging culture, this is actually conceding to what we are saying. By exchange, this is actually causing commodification of culture. When there's commodification of culture, we showed you as Team Affirmative that the things that were meant to be sacred, the things that were meant for certain rituals, they are no longer for their main purpose, and culture has lost its significance. What happens when culture loses its significance? Then there's no sense of originality, because the people are not doing what belongs to them. Then they do not know who they are. They take that this current speaker boldly said that because of things like customer care, we can go on and clearly do things that the tourists will find impressive. But clearly, does customer care imply that we can go on and sell our own culture? Because if my customer likes something and it will impress more than what I have done, then would I not go forward to try and impress them more? Then wouldn't that be commodification of our culture? Of course it would. And they come here and say, they come here and claim that they would not volunteer to suit the needs of another. But when we look at tourism, tourism is meant for things like economic growth and cultural preservation. But it has become a platform for culture dominance. And what happens when it becomes a platform for culture dominance? Then people are losing their sense of originality. How? We showed you in our speeches that we are continuously speaking and adopting to more foreign languages just because these people are coming in continuously, and we are trying to please them. We are trying to give them the impression just because of things like economic pressure. Because these people have money, and we need that money to support our economy. We are seeing things like economic pressure, and that's causing culture dominance. Thank you.
Straight on to the point, I want to start with some points of advice. One, let us appreciate the tense or the structure of the debate or the type of debate we are debating. It is a value debate, and people are kind of using future tense. We are going to do this, we shall do this, we will do this, government will do this. So in as much as at the end of the day we have to judge you based on what you have presented, but it is important that we understand that in a value debate we are evaluating things that are already in place or things that have taken place, especially now like in this one where tourism is already an ongoing practice. So we don't expect future tense, but expect something like past tense or present continuous, because at the end of the day the thing is already in place, or whatever we are discussing is already in place. But then to get into what you discussed, the case from negative team is that tourism adds economic value to cultural practices, and they highlight the ways in which it adds economic value, things like employment, and then things like revenue and so on, 6.6 trillion. And they say that this creates an incentive for government and society to protect and preserve their cultures. Then two, they tell us that tourism facilitates culture exchange, in that when these people come here, they get to know about our cultures, and in that kind of format, they are able to appreciate our cultures, and there is no imperialism, maybe they claim. So then, Team Affirmative runs on three arguments. One is that there is loss of cultural significance, in that practices are done to simply entertain the tourists, not with the essence of what they are supposed to mean. Then two, they tell us that there is cultural commodification, that we have to create ideal places that these tourists feel comfortable in while in the host countries, and hence we believe that these two combined, it leads to some kind of cultural imperialism. Lastly, they bring up the point of economic dependence based on the matter of fact that they are now foreign investors and things to do with profit repatriation. However, on my judgment, I think that now the issue to deal with economic dependence is now engaging on the issue to deal with economic value. Now, on the issue to deal with economic dependence, who wins on the two? I feel like affirmative discussing economic dependence and really not relating it to how then it drives us to imperialism leaves Team Negative with superiority over this argument, because they tell that the economic value that comes along enables us to preserve and protect our cultures. But then the rebuttals that Affirmative presents about this whole thing of tourism facilitating cultural exchange, and then the issue to deal with economic value, and the issue to deal with sustainability of preservation of culture, in that at the long term we are selling off our culture, but we are also adapting to a new culture. So at the end of the day, economic value ceases to exist. And then the other issue they stage is that exchange must be two-way, meaning that the practices that have been known to the tourists within the host country must be carried on. That's why you now hear questions like, okay, if we're exchanging culture, why aren't the tourists speaking our country, our language, I mean? Why aren't they speaking our language? And then the other issues to deal with now, the adaptability that the host country has to undergo to ensure that they facilitate the needs of these tourists is something that washes away the issue to deal with culture exchange and the issue to deal with economic value. Whereas on their side, you fail on the primary role of rebuttal. You leave things like loss of cultural significance standing, things to deal with entertainment, cultural rituals, cultural dances being used for entertainment instead of the rituals for which it was supposed to serve. So things like this create the sense that cultural imperialism really exists, but then also things that the host having to adapt or commodification of culture. For example, we have to speak English in order to accommodate these tourists. So things that were locally known things that seem to exist with local attachment are now supposed to cater for in a certain way for the tourists kind of, I don't know, for their needs. If they speak English, then we have to get a drum, and then we put there that it's a drum instead of the local name, Ngoma. So I feel like these arguments were above your arguments, and to me, these are the marks. I give affirmative 16 for style. I give you 16 for style. I feel like teams tried. However, I think we can do better. Third speakers, the fourth speakers did a very good role, especially the fourth affirmative. And then content, I give you 25, I give you 25, simply because both teams had relevant content too in regards to the matter that they submitted. Then I give strategy, I give them 21, I give you 21, which makes a total, I give you 20, which makes, relax, which makes a total of, let me see, not added here. Making a total of 62 for the affirmative and 61 for the negative team. Thank you.
I will start by advising both teams. We really need to make extensive research, because what we are debating about are things that are already in play. I'll just give an example. If we are making a comparison of culture, maybe for example the traditional dance, you look at the way the Ugandans dance to Mapiano compared to their own native dance. The other day we just had an artist coming here, Diamond Platnumz, and when he came, people were really able to sing to his music. People were really able to dance, if we are now looking at business tourism, as you argue. Now let's make a comparison. When, for example, assuming a local artist from Uganda goes to the other side, are they able to reciprocate whatever they are also giving us this side? The number two, let's measure on majors and not minors. I'll give an example for this. For example, team negative, when you have an argument and where you are saying that we also have local tourists, so how are we going to have cultural imperialism when we are having local tourists? For example, they are not crossing borders, we are having people of Uganda. How are we going to have imperialism of culture when we are dealing with Ugandans? Let me tell you, this could be one of the best strategies you could ever use. For example, team affirmative, for them they leave it open for you. For example, if we are talking about tourism, they don't limit whether they are talking about national or international or internal or external tourism. They leave it open. For them, the only thing they tell you, they just go and break it down for you, that you see, if we are talking about tourism, we have tourism to do with ecotourism, we have tourism to do with business tourism, to do with industries, and to do with culture. So now, you cannot also now come and concede to how they have opened it. What about if you have limited them? They're talking now, for example, if you are looking at a parameter or a status quo, we are looking at local tourism. Shall we also have the cultural imperialism as you are talking about? But now when you come up and then you consider and then you also open it up to them, then what does it leave up with you? Then we're also hearing something to do with customer care in the last speeches. But you see, when customer care is questioned, they said, okay, does now customer care come with, or should it come at the expense of now languages, that we should now leave our own languages and then we go to the other side? Then those arguments like here colonialism, that you see, we are coming up with English, we are speaking English because of the colonialists. Then the other question could be, so don't you think by virtue that we have now carried on this English to tourism, it now amounts to imperialism? You get? Then also now to the fourth speakers, let's be careful. Yes, you need to listen to the questions they ask. They ask you, are you exchanging culture? You say no. So now what is the alternative? The alternative is cultural exchange. So if you're not exchanging, then what are you doing? What is the alternative now? If it's not imperialism, then what next? You get? Then also, it was also, maybe on another day, I really believe you need to build up on the rebuttal where you are saying that, you see, these people are doing it, but they are not forced. That is why now these people are telling you, okay, they are not forced. But at what expense is it coming? At what expense is the cultural exchange coming? That's why you see they keep on telling that, you say, if we're having exchange, it means you give me something, I also give you something. Now for you, if you say that, you say the exchange is because someone is benefiting financially, then the other one is having display. So that's why they say, okay, yes, even if there's exchange, at what expense is it? How come if there's an exchange that they come, for you the question you are like, but you see, they also come, when these people are dancing, they come and join the dance. Now the question comes to you, Do they also now take back the dance after joining it here? Do they take it back the other side? Like there for us, we are retaining their own dance this side. So it was just a matter of, how are you building the cultural exchange? Because now for them, they are telling you, okay, the culture exchange is there, but at what expense? How come for us, it is us that are learning their language, learning their dance strokes, learning their culture, even building lodges to suit whatever favors them? Are they doing the same for our culture when they go the other side? Because now that is what will amount to cultural exchange. So it was not a wrong alternative for you to choose the cultural exchange. But now you just had an alternative of telling them how the cultural exchange surpasses the cultural imperialism they are talking about. So I give you both of you 15 for style, 29 for strategy, 26, content 25, 26, making a total of 69 for team affirmative and a total of 67 for team negative. So according to me, I give a win to team affirmative. Thank you so much.
Guys, a lot has been said. I don't want to overly repeat it. But like we have always said, please make sure that all your substantive arguments come in your first and second speeches. The arguments from the negative team that came so late, arguments like local tourism, arguments like tourism is the only reason we would preserve culture as against any other reason, came so late. Such analysis came very late in the debate, which I feel should be at the start of the debate. Number two, I think the debate was full of basic denials. For example, a person says that, the biggest investors in tourism are foreigners, and you just agree. You just don't rebut it, advance a rebuttal to that extent. You only tell us what we gain. You don't tell us that it is actually untrue that the biggest investors are foreigners. Or for example, someone tells you that we are speaking English because we are accommodating tourism. Yet English is a national language here in Uganda. I don't feel those arguments should not just be agreed to. There are very many bare denials. So for example, if you say that we are voluntarily trading into tourism, it doesn't take away the fact that maybe when you're voluntarily trading into tourism, you're giving up away your culture or what. At the end of the day, I feel we gave a lot of claims and denials in rebuttal around the debate without really getting deep into the debate to analyze it and understand what imperialism looked like before and what modern imperialism is and how tourism sits in either to become an imperialistic strategy or mindset or for the negative team actually a liberation strategy in that regard. That said, I felt that you are evenly balanced teams, but one team has to learn at the end of the day, as we have been guided to say. I would say otherwise, but I've been guided to say learn. So I gave 15 for style to the affirmative team and 14 to the negative team, 25 for strategy to the affirmative team and 22 to the negative team, 20 for content and 22, making a total of 60 and 58. Thank you very much. It is a unanimous decision that the affirmative team wins this debate.